It says going live. Hey, I think we're live. All right. Welcome back to another live Q&A. I'm going to keep doing these every Friday for a little while. But yeah, these live Q&As are just to allow people to come in and ask any web development related questions. So it's pretty much anything, like any sort of blockers, any sort of, because I know a lot of you had questions about coding boot camps, and a lot of you are, deciding between like self-taught and coding boot camps, and potentially even like a CS degree. But yeah, this live stream is just to bring us tons of questions, and I say us because I invited my friend Ben on. Hey Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Very excited to be here. Very happy.
He's some of you might know him, but he has helped me for a long time with my mentorship meetup. Really cool software engineer to get to know. Very generous with his time too. But yeah, welcome everyone. I like for the first couple minutes, I kind of just gonna be selfish and dig into like how his job's going because I know he got a new position recently. Hey hologram, how you doing? Welcome back. Yeah, so like I said, I'm gonna be selfish. I want to know, how has your new job been going?
It's been really awesome. I've really loved it so far. So for those of you who don't know, I'm working as a software engineer at Screencastify. We're a company that works on creating sort of video recorders for K through 12 schools to help them both record any projects that they might need to record and use that in their day-to-day lives to make schooling in a remote environment a lot easier. So it's been a lot of fun. The team I'm on is working on a editor, so we're sort of creating like a Adobe After Effects type video editor inside of the browser that's accessible to anybody. And we face a lot of interesting problems, a lot of really cool people on the team, and yeah, I'm super happy.
Hey Jeffrey, how's it going? Yeah,
Well,
so your position right now is like focused on front end, right? It's
yeah,
mainly just building out that extension.
yeah. It's right now my focus is mostly front end. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of like if I want to pick up a backend ticket or get insight into that, they're very open to helping me get that. But yeah, I'm the master of the front end for now.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you're happy with it. I was curious how that was gonna go. Okay, so anyone in here, ask us any questions that you have, whatever blockers you have, bring it to us. Ben has been a software engineer for a while now. I think yeah, you've been on my podcast too. So he's helped answer questions and give advice to people. Hey, the boring kid, how you doing? Usually it takes like 5 or 10 minutes for people to ask questions. But I started diving into. Have you ever worked with Prisma?
I haven't. I've heard about it recently though. What's it like? How's working with it?
It's if you are comfortable working with GraphQL, it reminds you a lot of that. I haven't set it up with the front end yet, but I remember I was just working with Sequelize for so long, and I'm so sick of Sequelize. I'm gonna be honest. Like their documentation hasn't gotten better. I'm not a. I mean, I love Postgres, but I want to move away from Sequelize, and Prisma seems to be doing the job right now. I'm kind of just building RSS feed.
Okay. So what is Prisma? What does it do for you that Sequelize wouldn't?
Prisma, I mean, they're all different tools to solve the same problem, but it's kind of just a different way of connecting to the database and interacting with it. It's because I find that like whenever I'm working with Sequelize objects, there's a lot of hidden methods that you can use, and like even just the structure of the data that you're going to be getting back isn't clear. Like there's a lot going on with Sequelize that just isn't listed in the documentation, and there's a lot of things that I want to be able to do with it. It's really like, it's a different tool for the same job, but it's just
Yeah,
terrible documentation that for me that'll push me away from any sort of library.
Sequelize, right? Not Prisma.
Yeah, Sequelize is what I'm running from. Prisma, completely different story. Very organized, great documentation. Looks like we got some questions. I'm in high school and I really want to learn how to code, but time is a big factor. Would you recommend college out of high school or a boot camp? Out of high school. Okay, so would you recommend going to a college or a coding boot camp right out of high school? What do you think?
Yeah, so to contextualize this a bit, my experience with programming was I went to college for a couple years pursuing an art degree, and in the pursuit of that art degree, I realized, hey, I really like working with this library called processing, where you can write code to create generative artwork. So from there, I rolled into a CS degree program, did it for about a year, and found it wasn't really my pace, and then went into a bootcamp experience. So that's to say that I'm very biased towards boot camps as opposed to college, just because it's a little bit cheaper, or it can be a lot cheaper depending on if it works for you, and it can be just a very rewarding experience, and it's a lot shorter. So my recommendation would be boot camps, just because that's what worked for me. But obviously different things will work for different people, So it really depends on what interests you. A lot of times what I'll see is for bootcamp grads, they'll be a lot better at creating apps from the ground up and creating just sort of working on projects and churning out different new things. So a lot of times they're more partial towards like web development or sort of more project-based startup-y work. While on the other hand, CS degrees or CS graduates tend to be a lot better at the computer science sides of stuff, because ultimately it's a computer science degree. So whenever you're working with data structures or any like big financial companies that might use where those millisecond optimizations that come with being really good at computer science might make like all the difference. Sometimes those types of backgrounds are more preferred. But ultimately, I don't think there's a wrong choice per se. I think you definitely come out with a different skill set no matter which way you take, and there's also even the option of self-study, not going to either and just creating your own path, which is very valid. I've met incredible developers from each different background, and it's all just a matter of how you feel you learn best, and also what you feel provides the education you want. Does that ring true for you, Don? How do you feel?
I think you covered everything I would have said. I mean, I'm usually like I don't know. I'd become biased, but I feel like I lean towards coding boot camps and self-taught because a lot of people aren't sharing their financial situations. And when you dig into them, a lot of people are, under a very tight budget, especially with the pandemic going on. And that's something that is so incredibly important you have to account for. A lot of people I recommend kind of steer away from CS degrees just because of the massive amount of debt you go into. You talked about like the differences of what you're going to learn between the two and what you're going to come out of each with, but ultimately, like the original statement was time is a factor, and I think it's important that you kind of like list your main priorities, list your main factors that are going to influence your decisions. So, if time is a factor, if money is a factor, you're going to get a cheaper alternative education and still be able to get into the industry, get started, and then you have, a full career to continue learning. You can supplement everything that you would get from a CS degree in your career. You can supplement it outside of your career. It's just, so I'm a little bit more biased with coding boot camps given the situation that we're currently in. So I highly recommend people look at the cheapest alternative self-taught path, see what they're going to have to supplement, figure that out, and then go to coding boot camp, see what they're going to have to supplement. And until one is satisfactory to you, kind of start cheap and keep moving up. And you got to do a lot of research to figure out, like you said, which one is right for you.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to real quick, because I know I'm probably going to interrupt myself just doing this, but Mr. Jeffrey Desmond, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome.
But just for the sake of being upfront, I should also mention that I have gone to Fullstack Academy in the past, and I'm currently teaching their part-time web development program there. And one thing that they offer that a lot of bootcamps or a lot of programs offer is sort of an entry-level program where you don't have to pay the full price of a bootcamp, but you can pay like just a small fee to get a little bit of education, or even you could just hop online and go to like Code Academy or something like that and take one of their beginner courses. I recommend doing that before hopping into a bootcamp or an education, because you want to figure out, hey, is this something that I want to do? Is this something that I enjoy doing? Is this kind of problem solving something I want to do for like the rest of my life or like as a career? So yeah.
Okay. That's really good advice. All right, we're gonna have to move more quickly. We're getting a lot of questions. Your answers are so good, and they're just packed full of details. I love it.
Impress you, Don. Just for you.
All right. Let's see. Just gonna catch up with a couple. Let's see. Granted, I'm doing iOS analysis over paralysis and picking the best boot camp, but considering Fullstack Academy because of you guys. Really cool. How is FS ratings right now? Is it still high? I actually did a review on Fullstack Academy. So I'm going to let Ben kind of advertise whatever he wants to, but I'm also going to give my honest opinion. Fullstack Academy, from what I've reviewed, has changed quite a bit. And, you know, with them being bought out, they've definitely had a lot of challenges come their way. I'm not going to go into details about it, but, you know, kind of a summary that I can just state really quickly that I got from the other graduates. Really good curriculum. They've always had a solid curriculum. They know what to teach. They know what it takes to get in the software engineering industry. Definitely mixed feelings about like career services at the end. And like we got some feedback about the Grace Hopper program, changes done to that, and like career day stuff, like all of that. You can touch base in the review video. I would personally, where I personally recommend Fullstack Academy is if they would drop their price a little bit, given kind of just how they've changed. Because what I want to see from Fullstack Academy, honestly, like they have such a good curriculum, but I want to see instructors that have been there a long time. I want to see instructors that know the curriculum throughout. And if they can bring in really solid instructors and keep them, you know, for more than a year, I think Fullstack Academy is going to shine again. Now, I have a very biased opinion about that because of, you know, the graduates I invited on to review. But that's my personal opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I also have a biased opinion of it since I'm an instructor there right now and have been there for a long time. But from what I know, or from my point of view, is that they definitely know what they're teaching. I see a lot of graduates come in knowing, you know, very, very entry-level stuff, or that sort of like 10% to 80% or 20% to 100% that they advertise, where a lot of people come like around that 20% knowledge range of what code is and how to become a developer, and end up finding careers in the industry at places that I'm personally jealous of. So I definitely recommend it. You'll get the education you want out of there. It's just a matter of, you know, finding your way into the industry and building up that network so you can grab that first job and turn that education into something tangible.
Sounds good. You got a shout out. Thanks, Desmond. That's a good dev right there. Sup, Ben? Thanks, Desmond.
Well, nice to see you.
Hologram says, NYC Flame, welcome. Jeremy, I don't know if I welcomed you, but welcome. And so Hologram says, did you have an imposter syndrome after graduating from the boot camp? I'm dealing with it right now, big time. You want to lead with this?
Yeah. Imposter syndrome is something that never really goes away. It's the weird thing about code is it's such a large field and there's so much to learn that it's impossible to even grasp about like 10% of all that's out there to learn about code. So it's incredibly easy to just get lost in the idea of that, oh, I'm not keeping up, or oh, like I don't know enough to become a developer. One piece of advice I was given when I was looking for my first position that really helped me sort of contextualize where I was and how to advertise myself was when people are hiring for a junior developer, when they're hiring for an entry-level role, they're not really hiring for someone who can code the world, who can create this gigantic AAA application right off the bat, or like even someone who can drop down and start creating projects off from their get-go. What they're looking for is someone they can invest in. They know that you're going to have some flaws in your understanding, that you're going to have some form of onboarding, or that you're going to have some catching up to do per se than compared to like the more senior developers. They know that going in, and what they want is someone that they can put time into and eventually create that awesome developer that they would have hired if they were looking for a more senior developer. They're looking to sort of take junior developers and curate you into the person that they're really looking for to give a good name for their company. So when you go into interviews, just know that they're not necessarily, or rather, whenever you're doing like a whiteboarding type interview, they're not necessarily looking to see if you can get the greatest, most optimized, cleanest answer that you can onto the board. They're more looking to see how you're thinking, what exactly your mind's going through, and how your creative process works, so they can understand, hey, is this someone that I can work with effectively, and is this someone that I can turn into that developer I want?
You're just going to answer all these questions. That was a phenomenal answer. I love it. Yeah, imposters, you know what I discovered? Because a lot of my mentorship sessions, I'm getting to meet tons of people. A lot of my mentorship sessions are filling up my week now, and I'm really grateful for that. But, you know, a lot of what I'm discovering with imposter syndrome is people that honestly, that have had imposter syndrome before they became a developer. They've had a low confidence in what they could do, the value they could provide to companies in the world before they even became a developer. And that's important to recognize, because like a lot of people have built really bad habits of not reinforcing the right things. And, you know, like I think we kind of as humans have this tendency to, like, when we hear like one negative constructive thing, like that's the thing that sits in our mind. And I think we need to train ourselves not to do that. But, you know, a lot of imposter syndrome, in my opinion, it comes from low confidence going into the industry. And I think like a really healthy habit of going into this industry with is go into it just to learn something new and understand that you're never going to fully master it. This idea that like, oh, I'm going to master it in 6 months. Every time I hear like, I'm going to master JavaScript in 6 months, no, you're not. I'm going to master JavaScript in a year. No, you're not. Go into it with the excitement of being in a career that you're constantly going to be accelerating in, and you're constantly going to be growing and learning in. I think more people need to get comfortable with like the unknown, going into a new industry, understanding, you know, like they're not going to know a lot in the beginning, but just having fun with what you're learning, finding those aha moments, like working on personal projects that really excite you, those passion projects that you could, you know, just spend so many hours in and lose track of time with. I think like you need to find that excitement with programming, and I think you're going to worry less about imposter syndrome. I think you're going to be more focused on kind of a growth mindset versus a scarcity mindset of like what you don't have. So that's kind of my perspective as I picked it up from, you know, different people that I've met with.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah.
Well, thank you. My pops is really old and worked 12 to 14 every day. That's why I wanted to get into this career fast and land a job to retire him. I want to put 10 to 13 hours a day. Good for you. I always love to hear people taking care of their family. I'm a big family person myself, so kudos to you. Just understand it might take a little bit. You know, I wouldn't. Do you know who Chris Sean is, Ben?
No, I don't think I do.
Okay, he is a YouTuber, and I used to watch his videos. He's really inspirational, really kind person, down to earth person, and he would share like his journey. But his journey was, I became a front end developer within 3 months, and that can be really inspirational. It can also be very discouraging when people, you know, most people aren't going to become a developer in 3 months, especially in the self-taught route. And even after a coding boot camp, you know, like I say, have 6 months worth of expenses, even after a top coding boot camp, of just that job search. That job search is intense. You know, we're in a recession right now. Like you have to be aware of that, and you have to go, like, it doesn't matter what coding boot camp you go into, you have to be smart with your money. So, you know, give yourself time. Even with the coding boot camp, I would expect it to take, I would give yourself 6 months worth of time of finances, and then you could trim that down. There's a lot of things you could do to be more competitive to get a job before that 6 months, but yeah. But so don't, you know, boring kid, I love the hours that you're putting into helping your family out, but also pace yourself with that. All right. Welcome, Patrick. Lambda School is offering students paid intern after program. As long as employers will take them for free. What's your thoughts on this? As long as employers will take them for free? What do you mean take them for free? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you elaborate on that? Is Codesmith the golden coding bootcamp? Have you heard of Codesmith before?
I don't think I have. What do they do differently?
Pretty much full stack. It's almost the same stack. I think they dive a little bit more into DevOps, but I got to look at the curriculum. But that's been my most requested coding bootcamp. So I actually do plan to see if I can get enough alumni to come onto my videos, and I would love to do a review on Codesmith. We don't even care if you get the syntax correct. That's true. Jeremy, welcome. He's actually been in a couple of my videos. He's a principal engineer, if I remember his title correctly.
Welcome.
But yeah, welcome, Jeremy. I would watch one of those self-taught videos that he was in, but the idea was like a lot of times, if you're able to talk through the problem and elaborate on kind of what you're doing and share your process, he mentioned that a lot of hiring managers will look past like little syntax errors and things like that. That's a really good thing to mention. Hey, Ryan. How you doing? Oh my God, I am behind on chat. All right, let me catch up. We're going to speed run this. I know this is a little bit different than you helping out with other Q&As. These questions come fast.
You're fine. Very good.
Hey, Tree, I have become full stack developer for my first job as a self-taught developer after 1 year and 2 months learning how to code. What are you rushing for? I like that. Self-taught developer after 1 year and 2 months. That's really cool. I like to hear how long it takes for people going the self-taught route. After this round of stimulus checks come in, I'm signing up for a coding bootcamp. That's a good investment. Let's see. Don't get discouraged. Okay, now we're catching up a little bit. Would learning HTML, CSS... By the way, hey, Epic Ghost. Let me remember to pop these up on the screen. Would learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Node, React, and APIs be enough to land a front-end developer job? I'll let you answer this one.
Yeah. I would say yes, it's enough to land a front-end developer job with the little asterisk that it's hard to define what bar you could, or it's hard to quantify what you mean by like learning. In terms of, you could say learning is like, hey, I've read XYZ books, or I've like gone through 4 tutorials for each of them. Or learning could be, hey, I actually know how to put these into a project and create something. And I think that if you are able to do the latter, that's much more beneficial to you. Or in other words, you want to make sure that you're not just able to answer like a bunch of trivial questions about all those technologies, but that you're also able to put together a project and able to hand it to somebody. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to get you that job. Being able to build that project, because they're hiring you to build stuff for them. So just fill up that portfolio. The more technologies you can add, the better, and just make sure that like you're building out those projects and that you're justifying like, hey, I'm adding React to this project because it makes sense for my project, and this is a very React-y experience that I'm creating.
React-y experience. I like it. I think that's really good advice. And like the one, I think you pointed it out, but the one like flag that comes up in my head when I read that is like, what do you mean by like learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? I think you need to better define that. Because like it sounds like you're just saying I got to learn this, and then I'm going to be good to go, and that that's it. And it's it's not that simple. But more importantly, like Ben talked about, like you need to learn how to build these projects. You need to be able to take these requirements and build something useful and valuable for the company. So I think you have the technologies down. I would actually focus more on the front end. Being able to pull up a quick server on NodeJS, that's great. Even be able to like set up a basic Webpack configuration, that's fantastic. and being able to interact with APIs and at least understand how they work is really good. But I don't think you're going to lean too heavily on the back end if you're focused on a front end position. So hopefully that was helpful. Okay, so Lambda will pay the intern. Oh, not the employer. Okay, we're going to go back to that because I do have a comment about that. Let's pull this up. So Lambda School is offering students paid intern after the program, so long employers will take them for free. What's your thought on this? I mean, if an employer is willing to take a developer for free, I think I would be cautious about a long-term future with that employer, especially given that, I mean, like, if the employer is they have the extra resources to bring in and mentor junior developers, I think that's a really good thing. But if employers are just trying to look for free labor, which it technically isn't free, Lambda is paying. I think it's great to get that real experience for you. And I would ask, well, what happens after, the internship's done? Do I lose the job, or, like, what happens afterwards? And as long as you have that understanding that maybe you're not going to be working there full time afterwards and you're going to have to hit the ground running with applying for jobs again, as long as you're prepared for that, that's a fantastic deal. Getting that real world experience is really good. Excuse me. And if Lambda is willing to pay for that, that's unique. I haven't heard of a coding bootcamp. Well, I have heard of a couple coding bootcamps do that, but yeah, I like it. Let's see. Oh, we missed Patrick's. Do any of you have a computer science degree? I do not.
I don't either. I started a CS degree so I started an art degree for about a year, and then I went a little bit into a CS degree, but ultimately what I found was it just wasn't going the pace that I wanted it to go in terms of having come from a very heavy art background and having come from like a background that was very based in like freelancing and based in, creating projects from the ground up. I really just wanted to get my hands dirty and jump in and do a lot of creating projects. So CS degree didn't work for me because it was very theoretical, very academic, and I wanted to build a lot of things from the ground up. So I went the bootcamp route because it just fit my learning style a lot better.
And I had a psychology degree. I actually got into computer networking for the first year, and then I switched to psychology. I'm glad I did, because I bring that a lot into the front end work I do. That's why I was so fascinated with like diving deep into becoming a better front end developer. And it was only until the last couple years like I really started pushing back end.
Yeah, I think one really important thing to remember is you don't want to discount your history after you become a developer. A lot of the times that's going to end up being your superpower. Because like for me, I was a designer before I ended up switching into development, and I can't quantify how awesome it is having a development experience, because a lot of times that rolls directly into what I'm working on. And like design is very like adjacent to development, so there's some crossover there. But I know people who come from all different kinds of backgrounds that find ways to let that affect their code and like let that sort of inform their creative process and really enhance their development career.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I like how you worded that too. You worded that in the mentorship as well, but your previous industry is kind of like your superpower that you're bringing into software engineering. I like that. And Jeffrey, just to quickly answer your question, Ben is a part-time instructor at Fullstack Academy.
Yes. Yeah, I teach their part-time software engineering immersive program.
All right, now we're back down towards the most recent list. Wow, this chat is moving. All right, like I said, we're gonna go fast. But yeah, that Codesmith video hopefully is coming. If I'm going to do a video on that, it's going to be released within about a month, because I have 2 videos I have Lambda upcoming next week, and then I have 2 Treehouse videos coming up 2 weeks after that. Then I actually have I did an interview with the CEO at a company, a coding bootcamp. So it'll be 5 weeks. If I do one for Codesmith, it'll be in 5 weeks. Codesmith claims you'll graduate mid-level or senior. That's BS.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'd say I'd be very hesitant about that for a couple reasons. First of all, what it means to be a mid-level or senior level developer is very flaky, I want to say, in terms of it's going to mean something different for every company. Like if I had just joined a startup as the very first developer and we hired on 2 new developers within like the next couple months, I'd probably be considered a senior developer just by nature of being more senior. Is my thought process there. But ultimately, your seniority in development more often than not comes from experience. And if you're not getting that experience right out the gate, then or you can't really have that experience without going through the hoops of being in the industry.
Yeah. Nope, that's really good advice. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Be very careful about that advertisement. I'm actually going to bring that up. I really want to do a video on Codesmith. I'm going to challenge some of the graduates with that. Yeah, I'm definitely glad you brought that up. See, you have to be self-taught. Full stack is so fast for me to grasp front end and back end. I mean, yeah, take your time. Figure out what you enjoy more. I mean, I always encourage people to experiment with front end and back end. Figure out like what keeps you at that computer for longer. What keeps you working on that project for longer? Is it, and like even when you get done with the project, look at the complexity of the project. Did you spend more time in the back end? Did you spend more time in the front end? Like analyze that kind of stuff. Because even if you are aiming to be a full stack developer, you know, every full stack developer I've met either leans more front end or back end. Like maybe the developer, excuse me, they like both equally, but usually their experience is going to speak a little bit more to front end, a little bit more to back end. There's no true like full stack position, and full stack can mean so many different things to different people as well. So just focus on building out the projects that you want to work on, and then, you know, if you figure out that you aren't able to build certain parts of the project, supplement that knowledge. Learn more about that so you can build that last piece or last feature of the project. I'm trying to land an internship first. What are your thoughts on developers really aiming for an internship position first instead of a full-time position?
I would say it really depends on the internship. It's a good opportunity because, like, obviously any experience is good experience. If you can find a way of getting experience that'll also get you paid, that's great. That's fantastic. But I say don't limit yourself. You'd be surprised at how flaky these some people can be in terms of like their definition of what they want in a junior developer. Because at the end of the day, I mentioned this earlier, we're not looking for someone who knows how to code their entire app from the ground up. They're looking for someone who can train into that person, who can be the perfect senior developer for them eventually. So if you like the company, if the internship seems like it's providing you a project that you want to work on, go for it, but don't let it be a limiting factor. Don't think that you can only apply to internships.
I like it. Ebenezer, welcome. Let's see. Do you know that every junior jobs is more than 100 applications for a single job platform? Yep. I think 100's low. What do you think that will make you stand out over 100 applications? Yeah, I think 100's low. I remember talking to an old friend, and when he would hire for his positions, usually with the junior position, he'd get like several hundred applications. And when he would hire for a mid-level, he'd get maybe 3 to 10, something like that. Senior level, he would get almost no applications that were qualified for the position. He would have to hunt and pay people to find that senior engineer to fill that position. So what makes you stand out? Let's just talk about like one thing, like one really important thing that makes you stand out. And I guess I'll start with this, but I haven't thought of my answer. I would say what makes you stand out.
I have an answer if you want me to go first.
Yeah, you go.
I think from my experience, the thing that'll make you stand out is take that extra step and reach out to people at the company, reach out to senior developers in the industry, and just build up that network. Because it's a lot easier to get into those interviews if you can skip past that pile, and if you can just make a connection with someone at the company and say, hey, I'm interested in your company and I want to know what it's like working there. So a lot of times that can be found through either attending different meetups, like attending different like hackathon type meetups, or just different places where people are looking to meet other developers, or just straight up asking people for coffee chats. Every single developer has been at that point of their life, or like at that stage of the job search process. So we all sort of understand how important it is to talk to junior developers and help out the community. But yeah, network, build up those connections.
I think that's really good advice, and I would elaborate. Actually, we talked about this in my Brain Station review. I think it's woman in the top left, Jessica. I don't remember her name. I'm sorry, Jessica. Maybe I'm even butchering the first name, but she had brilliant advice for connecting on LinkedIn, and she talked about it, and she just gave such good advice for people that don't really know how to reach out for a coffee chat, or don't really know when to reach out after you apply to a position and who to reach out to. She dove into all of that. She is a pro with it. Highly recommend you check out that video. It's Brain Station Review. Just look on my YouTube channel. But she gave fantastic advice with that. And for me, a lot of it is networking. That's probably what I would lean towards. But also with projects, I think like one really important thing that you have to remember is a lot of good coding tutorials, they teach you that, good coding tutorials are going to make you feel confident and good about yourself when you're learning to code. They're going to reinforce that. A lot of it's through gamification, a lot of it's through positive reinforcement, but a good tutorial is going to make you feel that way. And what I want to challenge you to do is test that knowledge. And so when you branch off from that tutorial and try to work on your own project, try to build a similar project, even like a feature that reinforces everything that you just learned, a lot of times you're going to realize I'm forgetting a lot. And that's okay. That's really normal. But you need to pair these tutorials with actual project work. You need to apply it to real problems and not have the tutorial hold your hand with that. It is so important because I see it. A lot of people will spend even a year going through all these tutorials and they have this portfolio of projects, but their entire portfolio is full of projects that was part of the tutorial. That's going to be much weaker on your resume. It's going to be much weaker on your portfolio. Those are low value projects. And also, it doesn't really convince anyone that you actually learned anything and were able to remember that and apply it and implement it. So you need to branch off from tutorials early. Even start with when you're learning JavaScript, that's why I know a lot of people don't want to build another calculator, but a JavaScript calculator is really good. A to-do list is really good to reinforce certain concepts that you're learning. Like be creative. You don't have to build those things, but this is why people recommend these tiny little projects to reinforce what you just learned. They're not really going to be portfolio projects, but you have to start out with the small things, small, simple, less complicated things to reinforce even the fundamentals. So just keep that in mind, and eventually you should have a portfolio of projects that are real solutions to real problems. That's going to provide a lot more value than these tutorial-based projects. I'm currently in college and build sports websites. That's awesome. You're already finding your niche. I like that. Put that portfolio on GitHub. We check for that sort of thing on resumes. Good advice, Jeremy. Thank you. Let me catch up just a little bit. Hey, Michael. Just to give everyone a heads up, I am really bad at keeping up with chat. I'm going to get better at it. Bear with me, but a lot of you have really good questions, and hopefully these answers are providing some value for you. Do you have to code your own website to build a portfolio on, or get a Wix website and put my portfolio projects on? That's a really good question. Quick answer. What would you say, Ben?
Yeah, my advice is, I think given the choice between the two, I would much rather prefer someone create the website from the ground up. But that being said, when it comes to portfolio websites, the real important thing is to make sure that you just have them. You just have a place where you can display your information. So sometimes the easiest way to get that is just, take a boilerplate site or just make like a flat HTML page, get that up there so people have something to click around on and look at your projects. and yeah, just make sure you have one no matter how you get there. So to quote my personal experience, I had a very tough time putting together my first portfolio because I got really pedantic with it and kept messing around with it, trying to switch things here and there. And it wasn't until I took a step back and just said, okay, I'm going to build this in just HTML. I'm just going to toss a bunch of things onto the page to make sure that I have links to my portfolio, deploy that, and I'm just going to work my way up from there into what I want. That I actually started making progress on the website. Just because, once I had that minimum viable product, I had something that people could interact with. I could start iterating on that and moving forward.
I like that. And I think, oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, I was throwing it over to you.
Okay. I think you mentioned a really important piece is you want employers to have access to your projects. You want them to have that visibility and that transparency into what you can do, what you can build. Now, this is where, because we agree so much, so finally we found something I might disagree with you with. And my stance on this has changed when someone really got me to think about it. But when people ask me about this, I've never had a portfolio. Never a portfolio website. Yeah, never. I remember I was a perfectionist. I still am. It's still something I have to fight against. But I built 5 iterations of my portfolio, and it never got finished. But so that's a really interesting thing. I've applied to more positions, but I've gotten 3 different development positions. And so what I realized is a portfolio website isn't all that important, even for junior developers. What is important is, like you said, Ben, having access to, or making sure employers have access to your projects, making sure employers have access to what you can do as a developer and how you work with other people. That's super important. So if, I think a portfolio is going to be a bonus. But I don't think you should invest a lot of time into it. Even just putting up a simple WordPress site or a Wix site to encompass your projects are going to be more important. Your projects are going to be more interesting. It's your projects that are really solving the real world problems. And so your portfolio, your portfolio could be listed on your resume. Most people will have 2/3 of the resume filled with their old industry position that has nothing to do with tech whatsoever. And it's great that you list that your old industry, what you were doing before you became a developer. Because like you said, sometimes that can translate very well into the unique software engineer that you become. But most of it should be your projects. Most of it should, either be projects through client work, personal projects that you built a user base behind, freelance projects. But, your developer resume should list a lot of your projects, and you can use that as your portfolio with a bare minimum. So the reason why I'm stressing this is because too many people spend way too much time on portfolios, way too much time. And I think you just need to get something up and get it accessible and focus on that first. You revisit that down the road. Your projects are going to be way more valuable than your portfolio is going to be. So just don't spend too much time on that if that's the route you want to go. That's my. Yeah. Now, a lot of. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I like it.
And a lot of people, Ben, maybe you were kind of like this, but a lot of people use their portfolio to showcase the type of person they are. Sometimes it kind of shows your personality. Often people, after they've spent so many months learning coding, they want to show off what they can do. And sometimes it happens through that portfolio. And if it's a fun project for you that gets to show this unique personality that you want to show the world, use it as a creative outlet. That's fine. Just even if you're going to do that, just don't be a perfectionist about it.
Yeah.
Really good question. Let me catch up. Varun, thanks for joining. Man, there's so many questions. So I keep giving you advice okay, quick answer, and then I take forever to answer, and then we're just flooded with more questions.
Yeah, but quality content. It's what it's about.
I agree. It's probably because you're on. I'm telling you, people don't ask this many questions when it's just me.
I got the dream team up here.
What do you guys think about Nucamp? I just signed up for it. Well, congrats. Good luck in the program. Mm-hmm. I think Nucamp's a really solid program for the price. It's definitely a cheaper coding bootcamp. You're going to have to supplement a little bit. I talk about that even in my interview with the CEO from Nucamp. Definitely check it out. But I think it's a solid program. And I've talked to him a bit, and he really cares about being transparent. Like we've talked back and forth about like how different coding boot camps, we wish they were more honest about the outcomes, because almost every single coding boot camp I've reviewed, they're not as honest as they let off to be. I get it. It's a business. They're trying to sell it. And he's very passionate about being very honest. I feel like he's someone that would say, like he would have a conversation with you to see like if you had concerns about Nucamp, even going as far as to say, you know what, like maybe this other program is the right program for you. That's, with Ludo, that's the kind of vibe I get from him. He's not out to make a huge profit, and we've talked about, all the expenses he cut with that. So if you don't have a lot of money, I'd consider it for sure. You're going to have to supplement some of the knowledge, in my opinion, but I think it's a reasonable choice. All right, this career is one of the careers where it's possible to go really far without the degree. Oh, you are absolutely right, Jeremy. That's why I love this career. I love that it's so accessible like that. Sometimes we talk about it's like you shouldn't get into software engineering just for the money, but the money's nice. And it's nice to have when you're supporting a family. It's nice to have that security. And now with software engineering positions being remote, we've never experienced something like a pandemic, and a lot of software engineers, kept access to their jobs because they were able to work remote. It's such an accessible career that can provide such a stable income and future for you and your family. It's just, I don't think there's going to be a day where I start talking badly about software engineering, even 20 years down the road. So
yeah, it's definitely a career that I feel incredibly lucky to be a part of. It's very interesting or very magical, in the sense of what it is.
Yeah, it definitely is. The boring kid, do you recommend any boot camps in New York City? New York City is not a city that's going to be open anytime soon. It's all going to be remote. So when you're looking for coding boot camps, honestly, right now, just look at the remote programs. Look at the reviews for the remote programs specifically.
Yeah, and any program that used to be in person is probably going to be remote right now. I know Fullstack Academy is remote currently, and the nice thing about it is if you do find a program that used to be in person in a certain location, chances are a lot of the attendants are going to be centered around that location, or rather, a lot of the alumni of that bootcamp are going to be centered around that location. So you do have the advantage of coming out with a specific New York-based network if you go to somewhere like Fullstack that used to be in or just based out of there pre-COVID. But ultimately, just look for the one that talks to you. Find whatever is right for the education you need and run with that.
I like it. That's really good advice. You can stand out. Everyone have a GitHub as a junior. I don't really know what that means. As a junior developer, you should have a GitHub.
Yeah.
I think that's what that means. I'm a hiring manager. Most of them don't. So Jeremy's saying, because Jeremy has been in the industry for a long time. We've had him on the podcast plenty of times. He's saying that a lot of, and I've heard this feedback as well. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. But a lot of junior developers, they don't have. It's been 50 minutes already. Holy crap. Okay, so a lot of junior developers, they don't have portfolios. They don't have GitHub profiles. They have very little to showcase. When people are afraid of that number of hundreds of people applying to a junior position, they overestimate their competition, in my opinion. And I say that because that's one thing that Nick, he was a head instructor at Fullstack Academy when I went there. He's like, you guys don't have any idea how much more competitive you are than all these other applicants. You have no idea. You haven't met all these junior developers. I'm telling you from my experience, you guys are way ahead of the curve. And when I heard that, it sounded bizarre because I remember feeling imposter syndrome. I remember feeling like I wasn't good enough to get a position. I'm like, really? I know all this other information. I can't even remember how state works in React. I'm still trying to comprehend that in my head. And a lot of junior developers are underprepared. Much more than you realize.
Yeah.
got a question for you. Can you go over about 15 minutes or so, or do you gotta leave right at 7?
No, I got all the time in the world.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Jeffrey has a question for you. Can you see the questions when they pop up on the screen or no?
I can, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you
So
read it.
for a beginner, how many hours a week would you need outside of class for the part-time program, and also for the full-time program? So it's the question is sort of on a case-by-case basis. It really depends on how you feel about the content you've experienced that week, and how much catching up you feel you need to do. For context, in Fullstack Academy, the program that we teach is the first 7, or I guess 14 for the part-time. I can't remember how the numbers work out, but the first half of the program is going to be what's called the junior phase, where it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of picking up of like new technologies and just turning them into projects. So like one week you'll create sort of a Spotify type clone using React and Redux. Another week you'll create a copy of Wizard News. It's just like a lot of academic work. So during that period, it really depends on how comfortable you feel with the projects at hand, and how much more you feel like you need to do to get caught up on those technologies. Ultimately, I'd say you're probably going to spend an average of 3 to 4 hours a week for a part-time program, maybe more for the full-time program, or maybe less just because it's going to be fresher in your head outside of class. But where the work becomes a lot heavier is during the latter half of the curriculum, which is going to be the senior phase, where you're no longer learning technologies from the ground up. You're just taking the technologies you already learned and you're applying them to build projects from the ground up that are going to eventually go into your resume. I would recommend putting a lot more time into those projects, just because if it's going to be on your resume, you want to make sure it's polished. You want to make sure it looks as good as it can, and you want to make sure that if you're going to be making any mistakes, such as like deploying things that shouldn't be deployed up to your server, like pushing the wrong things up to GitHub, just any type of mistake you might run into while working on one of those projects, you make it while you're there and not when you eventually find that first job. Just because that's your chance to learn. That's your time to get those slap on the wrists that say, hey, this isn't something you should be doing. And if this were an actual company, you might get in trouble for doing something like this. That's where a lot of the bulk of your education is going to end up converting into what would be considered experience. But yeah, I'd
like
say
it.
for a part-time program, maybe expect like 3 to 4 hours outside of class per week. But it's gonna be on a week-by-week basis.
Sounds good. Thank you. Kyun, Woo, welcome. I don't know if I butchered your name or not, but you're welcome either way. Let's see. What are your opinions on considering a long-term trajectory, either at the company or for future opportunities when considering your first job? Let me read that again. What are your opinions on considering your long-term trajectory, either at a company or future opportunities when considering your first job? I'll start with this, and then I definitely want to hear your opinion. I think developers typically will take a few different positions to find the right company for them. I think that's normal. And, I remember my second developer position, the CEO had made a statement that I thought was pretty accurate. He said, if we can keep, he was talking about all positions, but he said, if we could keep someone for at least a year and they move on, good for them. They're finding the right position. If they move on before that year, we've done something wrong and we need to analyze that. And so, that's a very simplistic, general thing to say, but he was kind of right about that. And I think with developer positions, especially with a lot of junior positions, there's a lot of, I guess I'll use the term like a bounce rate. A lot of people bouncing into a new position, and some of it's you realize like you get a salary bump a lot easier when you transition jobs versus getting a promotion. And most people don't do a really good job at negotiating that salary in the beginning. And so that's something that I think it's pretty normal in the industry. And we probably need to improve the job placement and how we do interviews in general to find the right position. A lot of companies are, doing their best to do that. But Thinking about long-term trajectory, I would say the biggest piece of advice is I'm a big fan of, and some people are going to argue with this, I'm a big fan of specializing, especially the first few years uh, of your career as a developer. And I would actually focus on a company. I put more priority into the stack and the technologies that I'm learning than the actual culture itself. Work-life balance is really good, but I remember I had such a really good culture in my first company, but then we switched to WordPress and I was doing a lot of PHP and I didn't want to work on WordPress sites. I still had so much to grow from JavaScript and I wanted to dive deeper into Node and, work full stack in a JavaScript environment. And it just took my career in a different direction. And I had to make the choice to quit that company to continue propelling it in the right direction, to specialize with how I wanted to specialize. So I think you should think about your future a little bit, but it's more of like what kind of projects do you want to be working on down the road. But at first, you kind of just have to try things out. Don't look too far into the future. You can. It's a lot easier to switch companies when you're in the industry already. It's a lot harder to get into the industry, but it becomes much easier once you've gotten that like a year of experience at a company. So that's my perspective on it. What's yours?
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree on just about all of that. It's, I mean, I would say try to find a company that you would want to stay at. Do your best to find a company that you wouldn't want to leave within a couple months, because like if you don't think you're going to be happy there, then why go into something that's not going to make you happy? But ultimately, stuff happens sometimes. Even if you're at a company that's like your top company and you really love it and you want to stay there forever, sometimes things happen. Like you just get a better offer, or you just the environment culturally or just businessy changes over time, and you might find reasons to leave, and that's okay. Yeah, so consider try to find somewhere where you'd want to stay long term, but also be open to opportunity. Be open to looking for places that might treat you better and might give you that experience that you're looking for, whether it be just working with the stack you want to work or on a project you want to work on, or whether it just be a more open, friendly environment that you feel like you'd perform better at.
I like that. And you have a good point. I mean, I wouldn't go into a position expecting to leave within a few months. So you do need to think about your future. I would say at least within working there for a year. Can you see yourself working there for about a year and then moving on? I think that's a pretty realistic timeline that a lot of hiring managers can understand. But I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know
Cool.
how realistic it is, but I think what I've heard in the past is generally people stay for around 2 years at a company in the software industry. I don't know how accurate that is, but
Oh, wow. Yeah, a lot of the data that I've seen leans more in a year, especially with entry level positions, or developers coming into entry level positions. When it becomes like mid level and senior, it's a little bit different. But I think that number is much lower.
okay. That's,
But see, I live in the startup world. I have worked at startups my entire life, except for my old career. But that's what I've seen in the startup world for developers, at least. Hey, Viren. I'll pull this up on screen. I'll be going to Hack Reactor soon. I wanted to ask your thoughts on the job market in 2021. Is it getting better? Um, I can't tell you that for certain. I just can't. I mean, like, just with the usually, I mean, like, I probably lean too much on the stock market to see how the economy's doing, and I need to branch out a little bit. I'm not a professional in telling you this, but I think we're gonna have similar hardships in 2021 as we had in 2020. We're definitely not out of the woods yet. But that doesn't mean you can't get a job. A lot of people have been getting jobs within COVID, and a lot of people that I talk to that have graduated coding boot camps, there's a lot that they're not doing to sell themselves well. And it starts with your resume, your portfolio, your cover letters, networking. Like, there are so many things people just do not do, often because they don't know about it. They don't really know how to. I think coding boot camps do a really bad job at teaching people how to navigate, the industry in general and do a proper job search. So it's very possible that you can get a position, but I would say you're going to have similar difficulties that we had in 2020.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know what the future is going to look like, but one thing I will say is it's a lot easier to network yourself in person, or to like find meetups and network yourself in person, than it is remotely. So if that's something that starts to happen as places start to open back up again, then it's an opportunity you can take advantage of. But ultimately, it really just comes down to sell yourself as well as you can. Just take advantage of those opportunities when you find them, and try to find those openings, because they do exist. There are people hiring. I found my job during COVID, and I know a lot of other people who have as well.
Absolutely. What other application should I build as a front end to land employers' attention besides websites? Keep building websites.
Yeah.
I think you're overcomplicating it past that.
Yeah. Another thing I'd say is you don't have to build other applications. You could just take one application and make it really impressive, really buff, and that's a valid approach. So sometimes the best answer isn't always start something from scratch. Sometimes it's just take what you have and make it as pretty as you can.
That's true. I like it. All right. Now we're starting to catch up a little bit. How long do you think you need to switch to company after your low-paying first job as a developer? Like I said, I would wait about a year, get that experience under your belt. Ben, I think you lean probably more towards 2 years.
I would say it really depends on the environment of the company. If you feel like you're growing, if you feel like you're on the right track there, then why leave? But so I know people who have gone to companies for their first jobs and end up in really toxic environments, or in places that they haven't wanted to work, and there's no reason to hold yourself to that company for an entire year if you don't feel yourself growing or gaining that experience. Because once you do have that experience, it is easier to find other positions. And if you're staying open and if you're poking around websites to see if there's another position that works well for you, go for it. Try to get it, and if it works, then make that decision based on what they offer you.
Really good advice. I like it. There's a question. Okay, so the question is, what are some of the impressive capstone projects? Let's narrow this question down into what's a really impressive feature that you could build for a capstone project? I can start, or you can start. Which would you prefer?
Yeah, in terms of if you were to build a capstone project, what should you aim for?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy had a really good answer a couple lines up, where you really just want to build what you're passionate about. Because ultimately, you can go incredibly deep into building, a Trello type project management app, or you could build a really shallow VR app just using what the surface level what libraries give you, and you can pull out a lot more from that Trello app that you built. Or in other words, just build whatever calls to you the most, because ultimately the point of a project isn't to just have something out that's going to wow people, which it is nice to have something like that, but ultimately what you want to take away from it is you want to be able to talk passionately about whatever it is you put out. You want to be able to put something up and say, hey, I went really deep into the optimization of how to use arrays to make this way less complex than it would have if I had used objects. So you just want to have something really technical that you can hook onto when you're sitting down with your employer and talking to them, to help convince them that this is something that you both just take a lot of pride and joy in doing, and that it's something that you're proficient at.
I like it. That's a really good answer. Epic Ghost, we could actually, I guess I'll answer the question based on this question. Are popular website clones such as Instagram and Spotify great to land attention from employers? I'm going to keep this simple. No, I don't think it's going to create a lot of attention. And I think I'm going to lean more towards on what Jeremy and Ben were saying. Passion projects are going to sell that attention. And usually a lot of complexity forms from passion projects. You put more time into it. You think about it more. You think about the users that are going to use it a little bit more. I think clones are really good for learning. I think they're good for reinforcing what you're picking up with the concepts. I don't think they provide a lot of value in your portfolio. And I would say they provide about the same amount of value as a tutorial-based project, in my opinion, maybe just a little bit more. But I think they're low-value projects on a portfolio.
I'm actually going to swing a little against the grain there and say it really depends on what your definition of a clone is. If it's an exact like one-for-one rendition of what the application is, you want to make sure that that application is providing like some sort of technical complexity that again you can hook onto and that you find really interesting. Because like if you're building something like YouTube from the ground up, but you're doing something cool with the video editor that YouTube themselves doesn't do, or that you're building from the ground up and not just using a library for, that can be something cool to talk about. That can be something to hook onto. Or in other words, you want to make sure that if you're building a website, the content of the website doesn't really, or like the context of the website doesn't really matter, as long as you're putting in your due diligence and you're building it from the ground up and doing that academic step of finding what's interesting about it and finding what sort of little nuggets of information you can use to get you that first position. So in other words, you don't really have to invent something new to have an impressive project. You just have to be able to build something and build something that is impressive.
All right. Thanks for that context. Before this notification goes away, I think this is the first time. Epic Ghost, thank you so much for the donation of $5. Appreciate you, buddy. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. I just activated that not too long ago. But thank you so much for the support. Like I said, a lot of my videos, I've been turning down a lot of sponsorships, and I'm going to go the crowdfunding route. So any support like that is greatly appreciated. I want to keep these videos honest, transparent. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Epic.
Thank you.
I'm actually excited. That's awesome. It gives me some energy. I have so much more work to do after this too. So, will you work for a company that have a product like Instagram or Spotify, or a company doing something else?
Reply to a Ghost question.
What's that?
I think this is a reply to Ghost question.
Okay. Then we'll move on.
Okay.
Oh, that's how I bring it up. Okay, so I can't bring it up from the top. I can bring it up in chat. Thanks again, Ghost. Really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm still really new to StreamYard and how this all works, so that's pretty cool. Are there any personal one-on-one consultations? Epic, yeah. I'll actually link it in the description. It should be in the description already because you're on YouTube, but I do one-on-ones all the time. Feel free to book one. I'm keeping it low, like $25 during COVID. Usually the price is a lot higher, but I'm going to keep it as low as I possibly can for a while until my week fills up too much. But definitely feel free to book one. Happy to talk further.
Yeah. I've learned a ton from talking to Don, so if he's offering any kind of membership, I highly recommend it.
Well, I really appreciate that. You're so kind, Ben.
It's true.
You know, well, I mean, like the whole reason I did a second review for Fullstack Academy is like, I literally, because we did one, and I'm like, you can't say a mean thing about anyone. Like, you have such a positive and kind perspective on everyone and everything. It's like, that's why so many people love being around you. I remember thinking, like, after the podcast, I'm like,
shout out.
What's that?
I watched like the first 20 minutes of it. I appreciate the shout out.
Yeah, of course.
It was with Nico, right?
Yeah, Nico.
Awesome.
I'm not good with names. Yeah, Nico was also kind of a kind person. I can tell you, like, my podcast, like, all of them were super nice. Every time I do a podcast episode, I have to, like, balance myself because a lot of people, they have really good experiences, and I'll challenge it, and I'll be like, yeah, but what about this? And they're like, so I got to balance, like, the positive and the constructive criticism. But I think they all had really good feedback for Fullstack Academy, and they all had a lot of good things to say about it, too. So I like getting like a balance of both positive and negative things.
Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic program, but I'm happy you have more information because more info is good.
Yeah, no program is perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's like the key thing to remember with any coding bootcamp as well.
Yeah.
I lost my place. Let's see, what other applications, projects?
I think our last question was that we had before this was, are bootcamp grads restricted to front end as a first job? Is it possible to get into a backend role?
Oh, I love it. Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question, Varen. So are bootcamp grads restricted to front end as a first job? What do you think?
I know plenty of developers who have come out of bootcamps and have gotten both either backend jobs or full stack facing jobs. At the end of the day, it's the definition between what a full stack developer or what a front end developer is and a back end developer is a lot less defined than it used to be in terms of, there used to be this perception of like, oh, the front end's a lot easier than the back end because it's back end super complex while the front end is just tossing HTML elements in place. But the front end has become way more technically complex and way more just different than it used to be, like even 5-10 years ago. So I think that if you come out of a boot camp, you're ready for either one because they're both equally as complex. There's no one that's gonna drive you up the wall anymore. If that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people have this misconception that front end's a lot easier to get into, and I think there is a little bit of truth to it in some areas, but I think you really emphasized the right thing there. Is front end has become so complex. It's just, I want to encourage people to like go the route that you want. It's like you are perfectly capable of getting a backend position if your coding bootcamp specialized that, or whatever education that you chose to pursue. I mean, you have to learn the right things, but you are perfectly capable as a junior software engineer, applying to your first position to get a backend position. Absolutely. So a lot of people, I think this is important because a lot of people feel like they're stuck doing front end. They're like, well, I need to get into this career. This is the easiest way to get into the career. And they start getting that mindset into their strategy with the job search. Well, that's just not true. Like apply for backend, make sure your education backs that up, make sure your projects back that up in the complexity and where you focus on the applications. Yeah, you can definitely get a backend position. Okay, I'm going to extend it one more time. Can you go 15 more minutes and we'll cut it off at 7:30?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, because we're getting a lot of good questions. So
Yeah, I'm having fun. Let's keep going.
all right. Let's see. Would you ever suggest that junior devs pursue freelancing over landing a first job at a tech company? Is there more to be gained in one path over the other? I definitely have a lot to say about this. I'll keep it short though, but I definitely do have something to say about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
If you have an opinion, you start first.
I don't have a very strong opinion because I had freelanced as a graphic designer a long time ago, but in terms of development, my experience is almost entirely with employers. One thing that I really liked about it was the consistency. When I was working directly with an employer as opposed to freelancing, I really didn't have to worry about any form of negotiations or anything other than just sitting down and working on my tickets, which I really liked. So that's the reason why I would push people towards landing a job at a tech company. Another thing that I'd highlight is I'd imagine it'd be a lot easier for you to get some form of mentorship from just going straight into a company because you're going to be working with the same developers day in, day out, and you're going to be working on the same problems as those developers. So it's going to be, I'd imagine it would be a lot easier to make those connections and just find those things that are going to get you that experience that turns you from a junior developer into a more senior developer. But do you have a different opinion or more informed opinion about that, Tom?
I think you touched on a lot of things. I'm just going to supplement on what you said because I agree with all of that.
Okay.
I think you need to understand, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do freelancing? Or do you think it's just a step in the right direction of finally getting a position at a company? And so if you want to go freelancing and you have this entrepreneur spirit, you're going to learn a lot more than development. I mean, quite frankly, you're going to have to pick up a lot more than just coding if you want to go that route. So I don't think you need to do it. If your end goal is a company, you're going to get, like you said, a better chance at mentorship. You're going to get a better chance at learning conventions. There's so much growth that comes from learning from a code base, that's 10 years old or however long the company has existed, where it has so many conventions built in. You get to learn like why certain things were implemented a certain way, and get to talk to the senior engineers about like all the mistakes they made, and if they had to refactor and they hope they can refactor one day, like what would they do differently? Like you have so much growth that comes from that and those conversations with a team where I think you're going to grow. Honestly, I think you grow faster at a company when you work at a team. So if your end goal is to grow as a software engineer and you want to work with a product, I would focus, like, you can pick up like a couple freelance projects, like really small ones. You could even reach out to local businesses that are struggling during the pandemic that don't have a website and just say like, hey, I'll do this for $100. I'll get you a full website up. It's very cheap in my opinion. And I like, it will provide more value on the projects. Like anytime that you can prove that you provided value to a business or an individual, that's going to provide more value than kind of some personal project that you just built in order to have a portfolio project. It's really hard to say what's going to be more valuable, but like you can get that experience, but I'm telling you, it's a harder path being a freelance. Like you have to learn some business stuff. You have to be ready to be sued. People don't really think about that, but like if your application causes any financial distress because of a bug, even, I mean, that's why a lot of freelancers get insurance. So a lot of people don't think about that, but it's a bigger uphill battle going into freelancing than it is getting into a company. I can tell you from personal experience, it's much, much harder. Ben, maybe I could see you being really likable, working with clients really well. Do you feel like going into freelancing was easier or harder?
My father is an incredible entrepreneur. I did not get that gene from him, so I didn't like it because I just wanted to sit down. I wanted to work on my tickets. I didn't have that strive to push people and negotiate those contracts. But I know a lot of people who do, and if that's what you want to do, and if that's something you're really proficient at, go for it. If it makes you happy, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think you have to have a certain personality and drive for it. Okay, so we're going to get to some questions, but there's definitely some chat. I'm just going to read through chat for about a minute and just catch up and then kind of like narrow down the last few questions. Development jobs grew in 2020. I expect that will continue in 2021. I love to hear that. Sounds very optimistic. Is someone in the beginner phase? Okay, that's a question. Kuhn, you're very welcome. Thanks for stopping by and asking questions. And Michael, if I haven't said so already, thanks for joining us. Just running through a lot of people responded to each other. Varun. Varun, yeah, we both went to Fullstack Academy.
Yeah.
Answer some of these quick questions. Can we find I'll quickly ask you, can we find the instructors on the Fullstack website?
You should be able to. I'm not sure if they're completely up to date, but a lot of them will be listed there. If not, you can reach out to me and I can help you out with whatever you're looking for.
Sounds good. Are you okay if I include your LinkedIn in the show notes, the description?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Front end is harder nowadays than the back end. It can't. I mean, like, all the arguments happen on the front end. Like, you don't have a bunch of back end developers arguing a lot of conventions. All these arguments are conventions on the front end. It gets kind of silly. The teachers don't explain and withdrew when they told me that after the first 2 weeks I would be responsible for the entire ISA regardless of whether or not. So be careful. Seriously. Oh my God, I keep missing these. Did I get another donation? I think I just got it and it expired or something like that. Mark Ryan, thank you so much for the $5. I really appreciate that. That support helps so much. Thank you. Yeah, that's fantastic. Man, no one's ever donated on my YouTube channel. It's a little victory. I love it. Thank you so much, Mark. Epic and Mark today. That's really cool. But I was answering, with ISAs and job guarantees, like, I'm just like, I'm getting irritated. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm getting so irritated at coding bootcamps not being transparent about the terms, because what the coding bootcamp should be doing is like sitting down with the students saying, okay, you're going to sign up with an ISA, or you might be considering, like, you're considering our coding bootcamp because of this job guarantee. They need to sit down with people and talk about the terms, like especially the common terms where it makes their agreements invalid. so the coding bootcamps don't have to pay out. That's why I'm so skeptical. Every single coding bootcamp that offers either of those, it's just, you have to be so careful about it. You have to read the terms of service. Do not sign a single document unless you know everything that you're getting into. You're going to hear me rant about that in videos in the future. I guarantee you, look out for them, because I don't like seeing students getting screwed. And I get a lot of students reaching out to me when I ask, like, hey, can people share, the ways that you got screwed by a coding bootcamp that they didn't tell you? Like, it was just sickening seeing all the messages. And I'm not here to call any specific coding bootcamps out. That's not what I do, but you have to be careful. You have to read the terms of service, any sort of agreement like that. Okay, so I think I kind of caught up quite a bit. I'm moving to YouTube. Why? Because of the donations. Yeah, once you get partnered on YouTube, I can tell you that coding bootcamp ads pay really well. My coding bootcamp videos do really well. Self-taught, less ad revenue, but coding bootcamp actually pays decently in tech. Entertainment, you hear like low rates and stuff like that. When you get like gaming channels, they get really, really low rates. But tech in general gets paid very well. I'm happy I took a chance on YouTube. Okay, so I kind of just touched on everything I wanted to. Why don't you go ahead and pick out like a final question, then I'll pick out a final question. How's that sound?
Yeah, I think we can combine two together here. I think there's one we skipped over from Benjamin Bernard about talking about the way we found our first positions. There's also a question for Varun about how important is a college education when applying to jobs. I think my answer for those is going to work together quite nicely. So my experience getting my first position was I graduated from a boot camp. I didn't have a background in college besides a year in art and a year in doing just some basic entry-level coding classes. But I had graduated from Fullstack Academy. I'd stayed on for a little bit longer as a fellow, where you basically teach for a couple months, and it's like a reiteration of the program. It's just you're acting as a teaching assistant as opposed to a student. But after I had graduated there, Fullstack puts together this little hiring day where they help you, sit you down with a bunch of employers. And one of the employers I sat down with was Jellyvision. It was a company that had originally inspired me to come into coding in general. So I was really excited to talk to them. So I talked to them at Fullstack, and they offered to interview me. So I went in, I talked to them, and I went through the whole interview process of creating a project based on a prompt that they gave me, and talking to the people on campus, doing like whiteboarding interviews and stuff like that. And I failed the interview. I didn't get in. I just, they picked someone else because they liked them more than me. But while I was going through that process, I had reached out to one of the hiring managers, and I went, hey, I really want to give this my all. So would it be okay to set aside 5 or 10 minutes where I could call you and just pick your brain about what's going to really help me during this process and how I can position myself to best apply for this role. So I did that, and after the interview had ended, he had reached back out to me, or after they had picked the other person, he had reached back out to me, and he said, hey, I know we didn't get the chance to hire you, but I really liked you. I really appreciated that you were one of the people who reached out and that you took that extra step of like creating that conversation with me. So I just want to keep you in mind. So a month or two had passed. I still was looking around for the right position. So I reached back out to him and I said, hey, I noticed that you have this seasonal QA role on your site. Can I just, take this because I'm looking for something to do while I'm still applying? He gave me the foot in the door. And then while I was there, I had helped a couple of engineers and they went, oh, you know what you're doing. We really want to hire you on and we really want to keep you as a developer on our team. So I had a little bit of a jumpy process where I had sort of marketed myself during the interview process, and I was able to take this failing interview and turn it into some useful experience, not just by creating a little bit of a network, but also creating a connection with someone who's super important to me, even to this day, just a really great friend and just an awesome person in general, and helping me find that first position. But yeah, ultimately, the reason why I really like telling that story is you want to keep in mind that even if you fail an interview, even if you don't get the job that you're looking for, that's a chance for you to build your network. Those are all developers who know other developers, and if you make the right impression on them, even if they don't have the position for you now, maybe they know someone who's looking for someone that they can push you towards or advertise you towards or help you get past that stack of like 100, 200 people that are sitting on their desk.
Yeah, Ben, I think that's fantastic advice. And a lot of people will be so hard on themselves when they don't get the position, but you just gain someone new in your network that down the road, they might hire you for something else. You might not be the right fit at that moment, but I love that you play the long game with that. That's fantastic advice. And I actually think that's really valuable for people. Before I forget, Epic, I did not miss this. Epic, thank you so much for the $5 donation. That is so generous. Guys, you don't have to do that, but I really appreciate the support. Seriously, thank you so much. And Jeff, of course I saw you, buddy. Of course I saw you. I'm not leaving you out. Jeff, thank you so much. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know what super stickers are. I think I activated them on YouTube, but I just see the support. Love you both. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't expect that support. Wow. Kind of make me speechless. I had my perspective on this. But Ben, I think that's really good advice. And I think I'm just going to add one thing to that with your story. I feel like a lot of people that have like even alumni that you were in the same cohort with after a coding bootcamp. Remember, those are future developers that are going to put in a good word for you at whatever company they get hired into as well. Like this network that you build up at like meetups and hackathons and, different things, like keep building that network up. You never know who's going to give you that recommendation that gets you your foot in the door. But Ben, I think I love that story. I'm glad you shared it.
Yeah. I mean, even with the job I currently have, I got this position because I have one person who I had gone through the bootcamp with, who was an incredible person, just a really good friend, as one of my coworkers, and my teachers are two of my teachers from when I went through the program are now my managers at this job. So in other words, it's just that network that I built back when I went for a bootcamp ended up turning into my current career and this environment that I really love.
It's great advice. As far as how I got my first job, I actually, on my cover letter, I live streamed on Twitch and I would just code and I would just help people that would come in and ask questions like 5-6 years ago, whenever that was. And I remember I would put my Twitch link and I would actually put the hours that I would live stream on Twitch saying, hey, if you want to see my process, feel free to have a developer watch me. I forget how I worded it, but my first boss, I actually have a review video where we talked and I asked why he hired me, and you can go look at more detail about this story. But basically, he watched my live Twitch streams. And I remember I got a call from HR. I think she even mentioned that she checked out the Twitch streams as well. She thought it was really cool how I was helping developers, while I was still trying to get a job. And so that kind of gave me a leg up. But most importantly, my boss was a gamer. Twitch TV has a lot of games. So he knew what that platform was. And he thought it was really cool that I was trying to help people, as best as I could. And I think that's really what made me stand out with all other applicants, was my live Twitch streams and coding and sharing, being vulnerable and sharing my process. That's why I always encourage people to, whatever creative format that you want to, share your process as a developer. Even if it's just like, I built this really cool project. Take a look. Let me know what you think. I'd love feedback. But yeah, I skipped the technical interview for that company while other applicants had to do the technical because they already saw what I could do. There's a really interesting way, and I never thought that would be what made me stand out. So put yourself out there and, in whatever creative outlet that you want to as a developer, network, share with people. Ben shared his amazing story of like what networking can do and playing the long game with, if you don't get that position, build that network. Down the road, you never know who's going to hire you. So yeah, that's my story. I got hired because I live streamed on Twitch.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's a great story because it really highlights that the people who are interviewing you are people. They're human beings, and if you can get along with them, if you can just be friendly with them, you'll create a good connection. And once you create that connection, it's just only good things can come out of it.
Absolutely. Couldn't said it better myself. Okay, so I kept you on for an extra half an hour longer than I thought I would. Ben, I really appreciate you being here. I'm probably going to bug you to do this again at some point, especially, while you have the download before your cohort starts at Fullstack Academy. I'll steal you again. But if people wanted to reach out to you, it sounds like people are asking for your LinkedIn. Where could they reach you?
Yeah, no, you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Also, if it's easier, my email is me@benodisho.com. You're perfectly welcome to reach out to me there. But yeah.
Sounds good. And for me, I will actually have both of our LinkedIns in the description, but there are many ways you can reach out to me. Feel free to do it on LinkedIn. My email is in the About page on YouTube. Wherever you see this, feel free to reach out. But Ben, thank you so much for hopping on. This is tons of fun. I know we're like 34 minutes over, but you just had so much value that you had to bring people. I couldn't get myself to stop this live broadcast.
It is always such a fun time being on these. I love being invited, and I love just getting a chance to poke your brain. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, anytime. All right, thanks everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to ask you for one thing. Please just share this wherever you saw this episode. Share it with other people. I'm a small content creator. I'd love to grow. I'd love to reach more people where this kind of advice would help other people. So if you have friends that are struggling, if you feel like this is valuable to them, please share it. Let's grow. I'd love to connect with more people. But thank you everyone for watching. Really appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your night, and happy coding, everyone. Take care.
Take care.